Right now, somewhere in the Persian Gulf, a captain is staring at a screen that says his ship is inside a nuclear power plant. He is not inside a nuclear power plant. He is on open water, and he has been on open water for days. So why is the most trusted navigation system on Earth telling him something impossible? And more importantly, who is making it lie? His GPS, the same satellite navigation system that has guided commercial vessels through the world's busiest shipping lanes for 3 decades, is feeding him a location that does not exist in any ocean on Earth. His ship's automatic identification system, the digital fingerprint every vessel broadcasts to avoid collisions and keep traffic separated, is reporting a position that belongs nowhere near water. This is not a malfunction. This is not a software glitch. This is not bad weather interfering with satellite reception. This is war fought with signals, war fought with frequencies, war fought with invisible electronic weapons that cost a fraction of a missile, but can freeze an entire fleet without firing a single shot. And Iran has been running the most sophisticated GPS warfare operation in maritime history since the moment this conflict began on February 28th. By day 13, it is working so completely, so broadly, and so destructively that more than 1,500 ships in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman have already been affected. Think about that for a second. Nearly half the vessels in the entire region are watching their own navigation systems place them at airports, inside nuclear facilities, overland in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, across the Iranian coastline, or in the middle of cities hundreds of kilometers from the nearest water. Maritime intelligence firm Windward, which tracks vessel movement across the world's oceans in real time, documented what happened from the moment the first U.S.-Israeli airstrikes hit Iran. GPS interference records jumped from roughly 850 incidents per day before February 28th to more than 1,200 per day immediately after the strikes began. Then it got worse. On March 2nd, the disruption peaked again. By March 7th, day 7 of the war, more than 1,050 ships were being hit at the same time. That was a 55% increase from the previous week alone. Windward identified at least 21 new jamming clusters spread across UAE, Qatari, Omani, and Iranian waters. Each one was essentially a digital dead zone where satellite navigation became unreliable, corrupted, or completely false. But here is where this story turns from strange to dangerous. The technical terms are jamming and spoofing, and they are not the same thing. Jamming is simpler. Spoofing is far more dangerous. Jamming floods the radio frequencies used by GPS satellites with noise. It drowns out the legitimate signal and leaves navigation receivers with no reliable position data at all. The ship goes blind. The bridge sees errors, blank readings, or no position at all. Captains are forced back onto radar, paper charts, and visual landmarks. In other words, 21st century ships suddenly start navigating like it is the 19th century. And they are doing it in one of the narrowest, most heavily trafficked waterways on Earth. A place where one navigational mistake at tanker scale can trigger a collision with global consequences. But spoofing is worse because spoofing does not blind you. It lies to you. Instead of blocking the signal, spoofing replaces it. A spoofing system sends fake GPS coordinates to every receiver in the target area. The coordinates look completely legitimate. They pass the receiver's internal checks. They produce a confident, authoritative position reading. The problem is that the position is fabricated. Ships believe they know exactly where they are. They are wrong. And because the fake signal feels real, crews may not realize they are being deceived until they have already made navigational decisions based on false data. Course changes, speed adjustments, traffic separation maneuvers, all of it can push a vessel directly into danger. Professor Todd Humphreys at the University of Texas, one of the leading experts on radio navigation vulnerabilities, analyzed the Gulf pattern and said it carries every hallmark of deliberate state-level electronic warfare. This is not incidental interference near a military base. This is coordinated, targeted, sustained GPS manipulation. And it is aimed directly at disrupting movement through the Strait of Hormuz. That detail matters more than most people realize. The Strait of Hormuz is only about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Under normal conditions, roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through it every single day. France, 24, and multiple independent analysts confirmed what the navigation data already showed. The spoofing is concentrated near the strait itself. It is aimed specifically at surface vessels, which means this is not random electronic chaos. It is a strategy, and the timing makes that impossible to ignore. The interference began on February 28, 2026, the exact moment American bombs started falling on Iran. That is not a coincidence. That is the opening move in a new kind of blockade. No missile. No minefield visible from space. No dramatic naval battle for television cameras. Just invisible signals quietly making the world's most important shipping lane impossible to trust. And that may be even more effective than closing it by force. Because 150 ships are anchored outside the strait right now. They are not waiting for the shooting to stop. They are waiting to know where they are. That is the first layer of this crisis. The second layer is even more astonishing. There are 3 United States carrier strike groups positioned near the Strait of Hormuz right now. 3. Each one centered around an aircraft carrier carrying roughly 75 to 90 fighter jets. Each one escorted by destroyers, cruisers, and submarines, equipped with the most advanced naval weapon systems ever deployed. The combined firepower of those 3 groups exceeds the military capacity of most countries on Earth. Their deployment was announced loudly by the Trump administration as proof of American resolve, a signal to Iran and to the global market that the United States would not allow interference with the world's energy supply. But there is one detail that changes everything. Not one of them has entered the Strait. Reuters confirmed on March 10th, through 3 separate shipping industry sources involved in regular U.S. Navy briefings, that the Navy has refused near-daily requests for military escorts through Hormuz since the war began. Think about how extraordinary that is. Oil companies are asking, tanker operators are asking, LNG carriers are asking, cargo ship owners are asking. Every day they are making the same request through formal channels. Escort our vessels through the Strait so the world's oil can move. And every day, according to those briefings, the answer has been the same. Not yet. The risk of attack is too high. Read that again slowly. The most powerful naval force in human history has assessed the Strait of Hormuz as too dangerous to enter. Not because Iran has a stronger navy. Iran's conventional navy was declared combat ineffective by the White House on day 6, after more than 50 Iranian vessels were reportedly destroyed. The real threat is asymmetry, naval mines, explosive drone boats operated remotely, fast attack craft, cheap weapons in a GPS-distorted choke point where radar is stressed and maneuvering room barely exists. A $500 drone boat can damage a $4 billion warship. A field of mines and 33 kilometers of water can tear apart a convoy. And when GPS spoofing is already placing 750 ships in impossible locations, when navigation itself is no longer trusted, the decision to enter under fire becomes a completely different calculation. Iran understands that better than anyone. And that is why the next moment in this story felt almost unreal. This week, the IRGC commander overseeing Hormuz operations delivered one of the most brazen taunts in modern naval history. He said that if any country could convince a U.S. warship to escort its tanker through the Strait, Iran would guarantee the tanker's safety. "Come bring the warship," he said. "We will let you pass, we promise." It was sarcasm. The entire world heard it as sarcasm. Iran was publicly daring the United States Navy to do the one thing it still had not done: enter the Strait. And after 13 straight days of denied escort requests, everyone understood the message. Trump had repeatedly said the Navy would escort tankers if necessary. Then on March 10th, Energy Secretary Chris Wright announced that the Navy had successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait. Oil prices instantly reacted. The market dropped more than 17% on the news. For a few hours, traders believed the crisis had been broken. Then the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepped to the podium and corrected the record. No escort had taken place. Not one vessel had been escorted. The announcement was wrong. The post was deleted. And just like that, oil swung back again, down 17%, then back up in the same afternoon, all because of a false statement from a senior American official about whether the world's strongest navy had managed to move a single tanker through a 33-kilometer strait. That one afternoon of price chaos tells you something deeper than any press conference could. It tells you how fragile confidence has become, and this is where the crisis starts climbing from military tension to economic shock. Because the GPS war is no longer only affecting ships. Aviation analysts at SkyAI Data Services confirmed that on March the 2nd alone, at least 169 commercial aircraft over the eastern Arabian Peninsula were also hit by GPS spoofing. This is now spilling from sea lanes into air corridors, and there is already a chilling preview of what that can mean. In June 2025, during the 12-day war, GPS interference in the same region was considered a possible contributing factor in the collision between 2 oil tankers, Adelan and Front Eagle, off the UAE coast. That may have been the warning shot. What is happening now looks like the full-scale version, half the vessels in the Gulf being affected at once, around the clock, with no visible sign that the United States or its allies can stop it in the current environment. Well, one merchant marine captain, speaking anonymously to AFP because of the sensitivity of the situation, described what crews are now doing. They are falling back on radar. Visual landmarks, paper charts, modern vessels using old methods because the modern system itself has been weaponized against them. And while that is happening, 3 carrier groups are sitting outside the Strait, watching, calculating, and still refusing to go in. Then Iran raised the stakes again. It made an offer no country in the modern era has openly made to America's Gulf partners. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain were told they had a choice. If they wanted their oil to flow freely through Hormuz, they could expel the American ambassador, or the Israeli ambassador, or both. If they did, Iran said, their tankers would be allowed to pass without interference. Their oil would move. Their economies would function. The war tearing through the global market would, for them specifically, become someone else's problem. That is not just a military move. That is a geopolitical restructuring offer. It is leverage delivered through GPS jammers, naval mines, and choke point control. It is Iran telling Gulf governments that geography matters more than alliance language. And no Gulf state has publicly accepted the offer. But the fact that Iran felt confident enough to make it openly on day 12 of an active war tells you how Tehran reads the balance of pressure right now. Iran is not speaking like a cornered state. It is speaking like a state that believes it has already changed the battlefield. In 13 days, it has effectively closed the world's most important oil shipping lane. It has rendered U.S. naval escorts impossible for nearly 2 weeks. It has pushed oil above $100 a barrel. It has jammed or spoofed the navigation of roughly 150 to 150 ships at a time. And it has watched 3 American carrier groups remain outside a strait they still will not enter. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi framed the oil shock this week with remarkable bluntness. He said the shortage created by this war is bigger than the Arab oil embargo of 1973, bigger than the disruption of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, and bigger than Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990 combined. That is an enormous claim. Those 3 crises reshaped the global energy economy for decades. They triggered recessions. They destabilized governments. They accelerated energy transitions that still shape the modern world. Iran is now arguing that what it has achieved in just 13 days surpasses all of them together. That framing may be dramatic, but the scale of disruption is real. International Energy Agency data supports the severity, even if not every part of Iran's rhetoric. Roughly 15 million barrels of oil per day are stranded. Iraq has already cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day because storage is filling up and export routes are blocked. Qatar has declared force majeure on LNG exports. That means around 20% of global liquefied natural gas supply is suddenly under threat. Saudi Aramco has already warned of catastrophic consequences if the strait remains closed. And through all of this, the GPS war keeps running silently in the background. No explosions on screen, no dramatic footage needed. Just false coordinates, injected into navigation systems, one vessel after another, turning the most advanced shipping infrastructure in history into a fleet that can no longer reliably confirm where it is. This is what Iran studied. This is what it prepared for. America built naval dominance on the assumption that no enemy could truly challenge it in open water. Iran did not challenge it in open water. Iran made open water irrelevant. It turned the Strait of Hormuz into a 33-kilometer maze of spoofed signals, mines, drone boats, and asymmetric threats where cheap offense crushes expensive defense. In that environment, the math changes. And when the math changes, even the strongest navy in history becomes cautious. When that navy decides the risk is too high, the strait is closed, whether anyone officially says so or not. Not closed by spectacle, closed by calculation. Trump promised escorts. His energy secretary said it had already happened. It had not. Oil swung 17% in one afternoon based on a deleted claim. The carrier groups are still outside. The ships are still waiting. And tonight, somewhere in the Gulf, another captain may be staring at a navigation screen that places his tanker inside a building 10 kilometers inland. He knows the coordinates are false. What he does not know is where he actually is. And that, more than any missile strike or headline, is exactly where Iran wants the world to be. If you believe this war is no longer just being fought with bombs and missiles, but with signals, fear, and control over global oil, then like this video, follow Market Mindset, and share it. And now I want your opinion. Has Iran introduced a new model of warfare that stronger militaries were never fully prepared for, or will America still find a way to dominate this conflict? Let me know in the comments, because this war may be far from over.